Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? That is the average time it takes from a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? Do you feel like there is a divide between lawyers and their clients? Then this TV show is for you. It is all about empowering you and your business with the knowledge and tools to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show that will give you some actionable steps to consider for the week for your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show of between 30 minutes and an hour, where we go through complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand, plain English manner. And whether that is through educational pieces or interviews with experts in their fields.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV. Today is Wednesday, so show today is one of our longer form shows, and it's one of our interview shows today, which is great to have the person on, and I'll touch on who that is in a second. I should introduce myself. I'm Craig Mason. I have with me Jeremy Stretton. Say hello, Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great day.
Excellent. So, as I said, today is one of our interview shows, and we've had the great pleasure of this person joining us for Business Legal Lifecycle TV and sharing her wealth of knowledge. Her name is Natasha Hawker. Now, Natasha is the owner and director of a company called Employee Matters. She is a senior HR practitioner, speaker, author, and trainer. And Natasha is an expert in employment relations, recruitment, performance management, terminations, and mediation. So Natasha Hawker has been quoted in a number of articles and a number of publications, including the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, the Australian Financial Review, and the Huffington Post, as well as appearing on a number of radio interviews, including on the ABC. So Natasha believes that small to medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of this country and work harder than anyone else. She's driven to help them grow their business through their employees. Natasha, among with all the other things I've just said, is also the author of a book called From Hire to Fire and Everything in Between. We've known Natasha for a number of years. We worked with her on a few matters as well. So as I said, it's a great pleasure to have Natasha on the show. Jeremy, what were the three top takeaways from the interview that you had with Natasha Hawker?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Craig. So probably the first one is that we go through in quite a bit of depth is hiring staff. So Natasha's got a lot of great tips and thoughts about what you need to do to hire staff. And so, if you're anyone who's employing staff, and that's what this phase 4 is all about, is bringing on employees. Natasha's got some great tips about that. We also talk a bit about the importance of management, and we go through Natasha's first rule of leadership, which I'll leave you to watch and see what that's about, or listen if you're on the podcast. And the final thing is, we look at what probably the biggest issue that Natasha sees every day in business with employees, and that is a lack of communication. So this is something that Craig and I are very passionate about, that you need to be able to communicate. You need to communicate with everyone, and I think one of the biggest problems in the world today is the lack of communication. And Natasha, is someone that, as Craig said, we've worked with a lot of time. She's a best-selling author with Hire to Fire and Everything in Between. This is a great book, something that I highly recommend that anyone who's looking at bringing on employees actually looks at. And so, if you ever listen to what she's got to say, hopefully you'll get a lot of wisdom and tips over what to do. So please enjoy my interview with Natasha Hawker. Welcome, Natasha, to Business Legal Lifecycle TV and our podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Natasha, let's start off with a bit about you and your business. Can you tell us a bit about your history and how you got into the HR space?
Yeah, I didn't start there initially. I actually started my career in banking and finance, working in dealing rooms when greed was good, trading fixed interest and semi-government bonds for millions of dollars. Um, and everyone kept telling me I'd be good at personnel, as it was called at the time. And so I then decided I'd go and start studying personnel at TAFE.
Okay.
I didn't think I was actually clever enough to go to uni. And so I started studying that at TAFE, and then 2 years in, I thought I will launch myself onto the world of corporate HR, but no one would have me. Only recruitment agencies were interested. And so I started my career in a recruitment consultancy.
Okay.
And that's how I learned how not to run a business. It was a really tough game back then, and some very bad practices that happened. And then I got my lucky break. I joined Accenture as their recruitment consultant, working across Australia and New Zealand, and had a ball. I travelled the world, worked and lived in the UK, down in India, worked up in Asia, got to go to Chicago and Paris. It was fabulous. And I think that really helped me get a really good footing in the HR world. And actually, while I was there, I went off to university and studied my postgrad in employment relations, and then started my business about 6.5 years ago. And we now have 12 in our team across Australia and New Zealand. And essentially, we help small to medium businesses achieve business success through their employees.
Excellent. And most of your team's remote, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
They're spread across the country.
It's interesting because when I started the business, I couldn't afford offices. I actually started working out of my bedroom, and that's not good. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. So what I ended up doing was I started it remotely because I'd worked for Accenture, and we've been working remotely since 2000. So it was quite normal for me. And so we started that way. And the funny thing is now we could afford to have a big office, but there's no point. The model works. We have a team that work from home or the client site, keeps our costs under control, and it's a much better model for the people that we've attracted to the business.
Yeah, it's funny that whole, there's this push and this thought that you have to have a massive office and, in the center of a major city and, with shiny glass windows and shiny floors, but it's just not necessary these days, is it? Because you can attract the same talent and have a great business without any of that stuff on the side.
Absolutely. And I actually think it would force me not to attract the same talent because they're predominantly the people who work for us have between 15 and 25 years experience, and they're HR professionals, but they don't want to work a 80-hour week anymore. They want to work flexibly. So this model works for them. So I think that would be a negative in our case.
Yeah, absolutely. And in so many businesses these days, I think it's a great lesson for people who might be watching and listening that you don't have to have the shiny new thing. You can do it and have a remote team and build a very successful business. So I think that's
absolutely. Technology is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're in Sydney, I'm in Brisbane, and we're recording this live, right now. So
exactly.
So you kind of talked about it before, but why did you move into your own business? So what was the catalyst for that move?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually, when I came back from Accenture, I had a couple of babies in quick succession. I was made redundant in the UK, and then I got picked up here again and worked contract for a couple of years. Yep. And then I had 3 babies in 3 years. And that's not very easy to have a big successful career when you've got 3 little ones at home. And so I actually started doing a bit of contracting, and I actually picked up a contract with a client and built a business that was a little bit similar, very early stage to what I've done now, but they were going in a different direction. I didn't want to go in that direction. And at that time I thought, you know what? I think there's a market here for this, to provide outsourced quality HR support to small to medium businesses whose employees are often a mystery to them. And so that's what made me go out and start my own thing. So that's 6.5 years ago now.
Excellent. I think that's a very good point, that your average small to medium-sized business owner doesn't know how to handle the HR, and they don't want to handle it in most cases, do they? And so they need help from someone.
Well, I have a client who actually as well, who said to me, Natasha, growing a business would be so much fun if I didn't have employees. And she's not alone. There are a lot of clients that feel that way.
As you know, we have a similar client base and similar client type, and I hear that sentence all the time as well. Yeah, life would be much easier without staff. So, excellent. So obviously you've got a lot of experience in the industry. How do you think that's helped you to what you're doing now?
Yeah, great question. I think the big thing, I really do think my lucky break was joining Accenture because in my view, Jeremy, I learnt best practice HR, but also business practices there. And now I apply it in a way that makes commercial sense to small business. So giving them access to those skills that they could never normally afford, nor do they need in a full-time capacity. So I think that would have to be one of my biggest breaks in terms of enabling those skills that I learnt I think the other thing about working for a large business like that is you work incredibly hard and you work incredibly long hours, and I think that positioned me well for starting my own business, because as you know, when you start, it is a lot of grunt work and there's not a lot of payback. That comes later. And so I think that really helped me out in terms of setting me up for running my own business.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that, if you've gone from the big corporate world and come into your own business, a lot of people think it's all going to be 3 months and you spend every 3 months at the beach. It doesn't work out that way.
I always say, to be an entrepreneur or a business owner, you need three things. You need to be incredibly optimistic, you need to be incredibly resilient, and a little bit naive, because otherwise you would have never done it.
Exactly. And I think most people who are watching this would probably agree with that. So, Natasha, I wanted to talk about a few different topics today, but I wanted to start off with hiring staff. And in your book that we mentioned earlier, From Hire to Fire and Everything in Between, which is a great book. I have it here. You can see I've got my notes that I've had for many years. And I wanted to start off with the hiring part. Obviously, it's the natural first step of the employee journey. And as you know, Business Legal Lifecycle, this is our theme this month is Phase 4, which is bringing on employees. So hiring staff is a very important topic for us, and to make sure that the listeners and the viewers of the show actually understand what they're doing. What are some of the key things that people need to look at when they're looking to start hiring staff for a business?
Yeah, I think the first two mistakes I see people make is they don't know when to hire. Generally, it's a gut instinct that it's time to hire, or the other thing that's happening is that the volume of mistakes is increasing because there's just not enough resources and they're spread too thin. And the second thing is they don't know what to hire or how to hire. And around the what, it's that they're not clear enough about what the role is, what the job description for that role is. And then the other part of that is they don't actually know how they all fit together. So when, for example, you've got a business of arguably say 10 and you lose one or two people then tend to just hire the same again, rather than thinking about it from a strategic perspective. Do we have all the roles in the business that we actually need now? And are the roles designed, to get us the best possible outcome? And I think that's a really important one. And then the last error there is, they don't know how to go out and hire the best that they can actually afford. And then what typically happens is they get what is not going to be a good fit, and therefore then you're often having that not so nice conversation that when it hasn't worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of comes into my next question, which is around alignment. And how important is it to make sure that your staff, when you hire them, are actually aligned to your business?
When you say alignment, you mean cultural fit, don't you, Jeremy?
I do mean cultural fit, yes.
Yeah. So alignment, I believe, is absolutely critical to success. And the reason for that is, and the example I often give is, when a CEO goes into a business and he exits really quickly. Usually the reason is not because they can't do their job, because there'll be a portion of them that can't at that level, but usually they've been weeded out. Often at that point, it's just the culture is so different, and they can't actually basically change the culture. It's like turning the Queen Mary around, and they're not able to do that. So for me, cultural fit is absolutely critical. You can teach people how to do the job if they've got the right skills and they've got the right attitude. That really, really helps. But, you can't teach your cultural fit. So it is absolutely fundamental to success. And there's some great ways that you can do that. But I think, I think you hire on fit and you teach skill.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. It's something that I think, even in our business at the law firm, we've taken a little bit of time to learn that and what that means. So how do you go about finding the right person who's aligned to the business? I know that's maybe a bit of a difficult question to answer, but what kind of things should people be looking at?
I think there's a couple of things. I think first of all, and I would encourage your listeners not to get mixed up with alignment, meaning everyone has to be like us as the business owner. The absolutely critical thing is you have a mix of people around you that are good at what you're not good at. When we talk about culture, we're talking about things like that everybody has a similar attitude, work ethic, that if you're a business that likes to work hard, play hard, that you hire people that like to work hard, play hard. If you get people that just play hard and don't do any work, that's not going to work for you. In terms of sourcing them, I think there's a couple of tips here. One would be your brand and your mission, vision, and core values all have to align, so that if you say, for argument's sake, one of our core values is that employees matter. It's funny because that's a value as well as our name.
That's right.
And the reason we did that is because we truly believe our employee matters team matter, but also that's a play on the fact that that's what we do. We think that employees really do matter. So if I espouse that core value of employees really do matter, and then I treat my own team like dirt, well, then there's a misalignment there. So in terms of how you go to market to find those, you need to find the sourcing channels where your tribe would typically hang out. And I think in the past we talked a lot about Seek, that was really the only way to find employees, but that's changed significantly since then.
Yep.
And so LinkedIn is a great source of employees. Facebook, depending on what you're recruiting. Job boards. I'm always a great believer in good people know good people. So within your businesses, ask your team who they might know that might be a good fit, because they already live and work in the business. So they would know that Jeremy's a fit and Fred isn't. Yep. And also when they recommend Jeremy, it's their personal recommendation and their reputation that is on the line there too. So they're much more inclined to hire people in that they think are going to fit based on their experience with you. So I would encourage people to cast their sourcing channels wide. So use lots of sourcing channels, especially at the moment, Jeremy, because I would have to say in the 25 years I've been doing recruitment, it is the tightest applicant market that I have ever seen.
Really?
The quality of candidates and the volume of candidates is really, really small. So the one thing your listeners must do is have a great candidate experience and make it really short and quick, because if you leave it too long, your competitors will pick up the best people available in the market.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said there. I just want to pick up on you saying that it's a small market at the moment. Why do you think that is? Is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually think it, for some of your listeners that are a bit older, and I know this probably goes global, but in Australia in the early 90s, we had what we called a training guarantee levy, which meant every single business had to put 1% of their total revenue to train their employees. Well, guess what happened? People got great training. Yes, there were a couple of jolly trips to Bali and there was some abuse of the scheme, but largely business owners had to think very seriously about who they had in their talent pool and how they could train them to be even better. That got kicked out. So then training stopped. And then we were leading up to the global financial crisis and training really stopped. And then the global financial crisis hit. People lost their job. People were out of the market for a long time. Training didn't happen on that core skill. And people really basically reduced to the bare minimum that they could actually do. And so all of those things have compounded in the fact that there is a very tight market. And the example I give is that if I was to put out an ad a couple of years ago for an executive assistant, like an EA, I would have got 100 applications, Jeremy, and 20 could have done the job standing on their head. It wouldn't matter which one of those 20 I put in there, they could do the job. If I put that same ad out now, I'll get 2.
Really?
One's brilliant, one's very average.
Okay.
And that happens across the board. So recruitment is very difficult, and you have to go after the active as well as the passive candidates as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting you say that. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting last week where quite a few people were complaining to the government representative about how hard it was to get employees.
Yeah.
And the government employee had really little idea about how to answer the question, and probably rightly so, but it's interesting to hear that perspective about why that might be. Yeah.
Well, I think, I touched on it just there with active and passive. So just to be clear, an active candidate is someone who's actually looking on Seek or actively looking for a job. Your passive candidate is someone that if they got tapped on the shoulder for the right opportunity would consider a move. And also remember, Jeremy, we were coming out of a period of extreme volatility. You know, people just bunkered down, and as long as you had a job and you kept your head down, you might keep it. And so their optimism about going and looking, you know, it was a bit of a case of better the devil you know.
Yes.
And so that's starting to change a little bit. But what we're finding is, unless you try and tap those passive candidates on the shoulder, which is another tip, you know, for your listeners, is make sure you're looking after your star candidates or your star employees, because they will be getting offers, and they'll be getting offers with big money.
Yes.
Because that's what the market will demand in order to entice those people out of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's all really great tips on hiring staff. And I think there's so many tips and tricks that you can do in that process. You as someone who works in that space, what kind of things do you do for your clients when you're helping them hire staff?
Yeah, I think the first thing is making sure the job description is correct, and making sure you write a great ad. Most people write appalling ads, and they're not about putting the candidate at the center of everything you do. So employers need to think about the candidate experience. We've all been for job interviews in the past, and you put together your best CV and your best application, and then you hear nothing.
Yep.
Or you go for an interview or a second interview or a third interview, and you just get a thanks but no thanks letter after you've invested a significant amount of time at that point. And so you've done some brand damage. So you need to really think about the client experience. You want that client to be saying, you know what, I didn't get that job, but tell you what, if I get another opportunity, or I'm the right person for it, I will still work for that business because I was treated so well through the candidate process. And you need to think about that. And I think you need to be very clear about how you sell your business. We get our clients to understand what their employee value proposition is. That's the what's in it for me.
Yep.
And business owners don't do a particularly good job at selling their business, or they'll do the opposite thing. They'll tell them all about the job and their business right at the beginning, and then the candidate just paraphrases everything back that you've just told them.
Yep.
So, and the other big tip I would strongly recommend is to two things. One is to do a mixture of interviews. We recommend that you do a technical, can they do the job?
Yep.
And you should be looking for only about 60%, which is counterintuitive. Because if you hire at 100, they're going to be bored and out the door within 6 to 12 months.
When you say 60%, can you...
60% of what you're looking for in terms of core skills. Obviously, in certain roles like yours, Jeremy, they have to have a degree. You know, that is absolutely fundamental. But I would pull back on some of the experience levels that you would be considering, so that you've got room to grow that individual.
Okay.
The second one is you need to do a behavioural interview. Behavioural interviews are past behaviour indicates future performance.
Yep.
So what that means is, if you know at SMS Law, you are going to be putting people under tight deadlines just because that's the nature of the business.
Yep.
You need to work out in the interview how they're going to cope with that. So you might say to them, tell me about a time when you've had to work to a ridiculously tight deadline. What happened and what did you do? And you explore that in detail, and then you take them to various situations. So when you were about to miss that deadline, what were you thinking? What did you say? What did you do? What were you feeling? What was the outcome? And what happens is all the behaviors, whether they're good behaviors or not, come out.
Yes.
And that's really powerful, because then you can say, I can see that Jeremy, when put under that pressure, is probably going to behave this way.
Yep.
And the last one is what we call cultural interviews. So that's that cultural fit piece.
Yes.
And so some great questions to help you find cultural fit. One is, you have to understand what your culture is, because if you can't define it, how can you work out whether someone's got the attributes to join you?
Yep.
But great questions are, tell me about your favorite place to work. Why was it your favorite place to work? Or tell me about your favorite boss. What was so good about he or she? Or tell me about the least favorite place to work. That information is going to give you as much, or that story is going to give you as much information.
Yep.
So that's really important. Technical, behavioral, and cultural. The last thing is to do, we highly recommend a psychometric called Harrison's assessment.
Okay.
You've probably heard, your listeners will have heard of DISC and Myers-Briggs.
Yep.
DISC is 4 quadrants. Extrovert, introvert. Have a guess which one I am. They'll have all worked it out by now. But what I love
Definitely
about,
introvert.
introvert,
Yeah,
through and
clearly.
through. I just
Like
married
me.
one of those. That's how I get my introvert bit. So what I love about Harrison's is it actually maps them to a job, and it says, is Natasha a fit to be a HR manager? Or is she a fit to be a business owner? And it will give me a percentage fit. So it'll say she's a 78% fit. But then it lists all of my traits in terms of directly related to being a HR manager, mandatory, desirable, nice to have. So when you're working with someone and you start to work out, oh, they've got fabulous attention to detail, but if I ask them a question in front of the team, they shrink down.
Yes. Yep.
You work that out over time. What Harrison's gives you is that blueprint from day dot.
That's excellent.
So you can manage them to success, and it massively increases the success of the decision on whether and that individual in the role.
Yeah, excellent. Do you use the Wealth Dynamics profiles?
We do as well. We do both.
Yep.
So Star Creator is mine. And so we use it for our clients. We only use Harrison's, but for us at Employee Matters, we use Wealth Dynamics and Harrison's together. And they're very powerful because the Wealth Dynamics is more my style of work.
Yes.
What is the type of work I'd be good at? Where Harrison's maps you specifically. They've mapped 6,500 jobs worldwide.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's excellent. Yeah, we use the Wealth Dynamics to help us, the style of person that we're getting into, the certain type of role, and that we've found that to be very powerful as well. But we might have to have a look at the other one you mentioned as well.
Yeah, Harrison is really good. It was done initially by a maths professor.
Okay.
He did it about 25 years ago, and it keeps evolving, but it really has lifted the success rate of the hiring decisions our clients are making. And the 2 times when the client said, no, I'm going to ignore that, Natasha, and I said, do that at your peril, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, those tests are built, as you say, by looking at a lot of different data and working out what actually works. And it works for a reason, doesn't it? You shouldn't ignore it just because you think you know better, because at the end of the day, the data doesn't lie.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all very good stuff. I think that the viewers and listeners would have got a lot about hiring staff. Let's talk briefly about managing staff, because that's obviously a massive part as well about the business. And obviously we can't go through everything because we'll be here. We could do a 24-hour show based on that. But I wanted to dive into a couple of things that from reading your book, and obviously I've read your book a number of times. But in your book, you talk about the first rule of leadership is everything is your fault. Can you talk about what you mean by that and how
it's a really good one. I think great leaders need to be authentic, and you don't need to be Superman or Superwoman. But I think that everything comes from the top, and you need to build in fail safes to sort of protect the business, so that problems are always going to happen. It doesn't matter whether your business is a $50,000 turnover business or a $2.3 billion turnover business. The only constant is going to be problems. They're just different types of problems.
Yes.
So as a business owner, ultimately, I believe what happens on your watch is your fault. So to be a great business leader and business owner, I think you need to do the following. You need to be incredibly authentic about what you do and have a great level of integrity. You need to surround yourself with great people who can do things better than you. I often have clients who might have met me at speaking gigs and stuff like that, and they go, I want you to do it. And I actually say to them, no, you don't. My team are infinitely better at this stuff. They're in the detail every day. I talk it at a level like this. You don't want me, you want them. But be very comfortable with the fact that you don't know everything. I think the next thing is you need to build, maintain, and protect your culture at all costs. You know how we were talking about, you learnt that lesson the hard way. I think that's really, really important. And I think the last thing is that, being a business owner is incredibly difficult. And I think, you need to systemize your business to grow it really quickly. And if you systemize it, then you can scale quicker. And then finally, education. As a business owner, you just need to spend a lot of time educating yourself. And I would say, the only negative, or one of the only negatives I saw when I was working in consulting, was once people got to a certain level of associate partner, it was almost like, I don't need any training anymore. And it's a case of actually everybody does all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. It's something that, people who know me know that I worked in a large law firm for 8 years, and I thought I knew everything. And then when I came out and ran my own business, wow, I didn't know a thing. And I think
Nor did I. And haven't we learned so much?
We've learned so much, and we've still got so much to learn. I'm what now, almost 7 years into the business journey, and I think you're around the same. And it's like, it's there's still so much to learn. There's still so much to get, and that applies whether or not you're the business owner or the employee. That there's so much to learn just in life in general, and so much to learn in what you actually do in the business. So I think that education part is key for everyone.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what are some of the key mistakes that people make when things go wrong with their staff? So here I'm really getting at, in dealing with their staff, what do they do wrong when they're actually, trying to deal with problems?
Yeah, I think I believe your employees are your greatest asset. They're also potentially your greatest liability. The first thing they do wrong is they don't know how to hire the best, which we've covered.
Yep.
From a management perspective, it was a little bit of that comment we made earlier. Their employees are a mystery to them and a great source of frustration. So they don't know how to build and maintain a high-performing team.
Yep.
And high-performing teams can increase your productivity and profitability enormously. So really quickly, Harvard did some research on what is engagement. Engagement is the measure of discretionary effort. And they did a survey across a whole lot of businesses, and discretionary effort means they're going to stay back at 11 o'clock at night, not necessarily because they're getting paid overtime, but they're so bought into you and your business and want to make you achieve and the business achieve. And where they compared businesses that had achieved engagement levels of 75% above compared to people in the bottom quartile, the people in the top quartile were getting 21% more productivity and 20% more profitability on average.
Wow.
Now, who wouldn't want a bit more of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of us would. So building highly engaged teams is really important. The other big mistake we see people make is they don't want to have that difficult conversation. They've hired someone who's not performing and they let it fester and fester and fester. And often what happens is they absolutely blow up and they kick them out the door, and then you're more involved. It's gone, someone's complained that they've been unfairly dismissed, and they probably have been, because business owners are not aware of what the steps are. They still think it's 3 strikes and you're out, and that hasn't existed for many years.
Not for a long time.
So get some advice. If you have a non-performing employee, make sure you go out and get some help so that you can. I'm a great believer in get rid of them. You can't afford them. Big business can. They shouldn't have them either. But if you're a small to medium business, that is costing you a significant amount of cash.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. I think a lot of us don't like to deal with the problem staff member. A lot of us let them get away with things, and that festers along for a long period of time, and then it becomes what I see, and the people who do come to us in that situation is they've let it fester along for a long period of time. They've made that knee-jerk reaction to get rid of them, and then it's caused the problems with unfair dismissal later on, because they've accepted that culture. And that comes back to what you said before about the first rule of leadership is everything is your fault. If you let them get away with things, then they're going to think that that's okay. That's the culture built, isn't it?
And I think one of I actually put a whole chapter to it, which in the book, which was around communication.
Yep. We
could solve so many of these problems just with a communication strategy. If I asked each of your listeners out there, who's got a communication strategy in their business? And it would be deathly silent.
Yep.
And we need to think about how we communicate with our team, what we communicate to our team, when we communicate to their team. For example, and I think you're probably the same, Jeremy, we're very open with our team. We tell them about our financials. They know how we're going month to month. And that breeds a lot of engagement, loyalty. They're very aware if we have to make changes, of course, really quickly, they can understand, because they can say, I can see why they're doing that, because those numbers are dipping. So I think, one of the things we need to get better at is communicating within our business, and you want people to be on the bus with you, on the journey with you. And if they're left in the dark and they don't know what's going on, how can they help you?
Exactly.
And they don't have that autonomy to do it.
And I think a lot of us entrepreneurs probably should know that better than a lot of us do, because that's probably one of the main reasons we left our big corporate jobs in the first place to go and start our own business, isn't it?
But then we get on that treadmill and we're spinning around like this, and we forget about that bit.
That's right. I mean, I know that for myself, that one of the reasons that I didn't like where I was working was the lack of communication, not knowing what was going on. We were just hiring a person to replace a lady who's going on maternity leave just recently, so we're in May 2018. And one of the people who came was, she had no idea what was happening in her business, and she wanted to change because no one would talk to her. And I think I'm very big, I agree with you that the communication is so key, and it's something that so many people miss out on, not just in this space. And we are talking about HR at the moment, but just in general, if people just talk to each other more, things will get resolved so much sooner. And that nothing's truer than that in the HR space and with your employees.
And even we've actually forgotten how to communicate using active listening, you know. So most people assume you've heard, but even a simple phrase like, so play it back to them. So Jeremy, what I think I heard you ask me then was, da, 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 do I have that right? And the person suddenly goes, oh my God, they're listening to me. And not only that, they actually heard me.
Yep.
So, you know, just simple things like that can make a big difference in a business.
And the other point to that too is if they didn't understand you correctly, then that gets picked up straight away rather than letting it fester where someone's misinterpreted what you've said or misunderstood what you've said and then acted on that and it's been completely taken the wrong way. And that happens so often, doesn't it?
Do you know what the statistic is? 78%, 75%, one of those two numbers of all communication is either misunderstood or ignored.
Yep.
Robert Bolton, he wrote a book, People Skills. It's a great book. It's an oldie, but it's a very good book.
And it's very true. So we could talk about this all day, but let's, you and I agree, and I think the listeners and viewers can see that the value of that communication. And as I say, not just in dealing with your employees, but dealing with, you know, anyone. If you just talk to people, you probably need lawyers less, which is fine. Yes. You know, I'd prefer not to have so many of these disputes if people just talk to each other.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the final topic that I wanted to talk about, and that's the future. So obviously, you know, in a lot of industries, we all hear about it these days. There's disruption everywhere, and the HR space is no different. Where do you see the biggest challenges in the HR space over, say, the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's going to be big. I mean, you're right, it's big across a lot of industries. I think the biggest one for the HR sector is going to be around workforce planning and workforce management. And what I mean by that is technology is moving at such a rate and businesses are going to need to be able to get their head around what that means for their current team of employees. Are there going to be parts of the business where the team is effectively redundant? Do we need to retrain? What are the skills we're going to need for the future? Because yes, there are, in my personal belief, there are going to be potentially industries that are wiped out.
Yep.
And I think truck driving is a classic example where I think driverless trucks are going to potentially wipe out a significant portion of employees, but they can be absorbed elsewhere in the market with retraining.
That's right.
So how do we manage that from a change perspective, from a caring perspective, because there's going to be a lot of uncertainty for those employees, and I think that's really important. The other piece that I would say around the future is with technology and AI, let's not forget that we are humans first and foremost.
That's right. Because
I think technology should enable us to be able to do a better job at being a human. And an example of that is some things I can see happening in the recruitment industry might be able to mean that they can, for example, assess a whole heap of CVs.
Yes.
But if there's still not this communication, then we're going to have a problem. So I think that human piece is really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something, you know, I've read a lot of articles, people who follow us on Facebook and are friends with me on Facebook and the various platforms know that I post a lot of articles on that stuff. And I think that's something that's missed quite a bit is the fact that people want that human interaction. The reason that small business exists is because people want to deal with someone one-on-one. And that's not going to change. And that's not going to change. And I mean, who knows where technology goes in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But people still want to deal with a human being, and they still want to know that they're getting advice from someone, you know, like them, because we're all tribal. So I think there's a lot of, yes, truck drivers, yes, there's other industries that are going to end, but people still want that one-on-one interaction. So jobs aren't going to go out the door. As much as some futurists like to say it, they're not going to go completely out the door for, you know, for a long time, I wouldn't have thought.
No, it was like the Y2K, you know, everything was doom and gloom around Y2K and it all kept going.
That's right.
It's just different.
Although if you read some articles, they do say that was because of all the work that was put in to fix all the computers. So
potentially,
yeah. I was at uni or just starting uni back then. So, so that's the future, of your industry. What about for you? What's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah, we recently, we're very much about income follows assets. So we've been really trying to build some assets. So we came across a client who said, we've just acquired 5 businesses. We've got no idea whether they're compliant with their HR requirements or workplace health and safety. Can you help? And I said, well, I haven't built it yet, but I will build it. And so I ended up building a piece of diagnostic software called Employee Metrics. And what Employee Metrics does is it assesses a business for its current levels of HR compliance, risk, and it puts a price on that risk exposure and where they're following best practice. And that's a really exciting piece of a tool that we've developed, and we think there's a couple of markets. One is HR directors and corporates. Let's think about our boards that are trying to manage risk and culture at the moment. There's a lot of work we could be doing in that space to work out what's sitting in there. M&A, so getting a business ready for sale to optimize their price. Assessing a business to buy or integrating two businesses, because often what happens, and you and I have read the same book, is that it comes unstuck at that merger. It's, again, back to the people piece.
That's right.
And it's not done well. So how do we merge those businesses? And the last market, I think, for that is for independent HR consultants. So we're really excited about it. And our big, hairy, audacious goal, and my husband hates it when I use that term, it is to take it global, because all we do is pull out the Australian specific legislation and plug in the UK, and I've worked in the UK, so that's pretty easy to do, to get someone to do that. So that's our exciting thing for the horizon. That's what I'm focused on marketing this year. Yeah,
excellent. And when you said it tells you the price, is that the risk, the amount that you could potentially lose if you
the amount, it's both amount you can breach, so all these breaches that it identifies has a price of up to $63,000 or up to 6 months salary, and then we put a lot of cost. So for example, if you have a role vacant for 21 days versus 50 days, what's that actually cost? That's a productivity cost to the business.
Sounds good. And I think, and just going to what you said at the end of that, the answer there was about the worldwide thing. I think that's something I've learned, with the Business Legal Lifecycle, and we've recently rebranded to Business Legal Lifecycle Worldwide because we're expanding to the UK and the US, and the laws aren't that different. And we have these great tools that us little business owners in Australia can build here and then take global, because the technology's there and everything's there. So I think that's a great, big, hairy, audacious goal. I love that term. All right. So look, let's move in. We've got a couple of quick fire questions if you're ready for those.
Go for it.
So just give me the short, quick answer to to each of the questions. There's 3 of them. So what is the current book that you're reading right now?
Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss on negotiation skills.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Yes, it's funny you say that. I recently got back from the US for a mastermind group that I'm a member of over in Nashville, and about 4 people recommended that book to me. So it's on my list of books to read.
It is amazing.
Yeah. Once I get through Profit First and Wicked Power, which I'm reading at the moment, which is a really interesting book. I'll get into that one next, I think, because with so many people reading it and recommending it, it's certainly got a lot of credibility there. So what is the book that you think every business owner should read? And the answer doesn't have to be Business Legal Lifecycle.
Look, I think that's a great book, but I think business owners work too hard and they don't think about the end game. So one of the reads that I had that made a massive difference to me was actually Smart Business Exit. Because we all work so hard, and actually I want a paycheck at the end of this.
Yes.
And what I had the misconception of is you prepare for exit 3 years before you exit, but that's not the case at all. You prepare for it from day dot. And Jeff Green's Smart Business Exit would be the one that I think all business owners should absolutely read.
Couldn't agree more. That is an excellent book, and we'll link that up in the show notes. We've seen Jeff Green present at a conference, and it's very powerful stuff what he talks about. So that's a great answer to that question. And it's also not one of the books that everyone else has read. It is quite a niche book. So that's great. So the third and final question is, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would that advice be?
Back yourself. You're worth more than you think you are.
Great answer. Excellent. All right. Well, Natasha, thank you so much for your time today. I think that, I know that the viewers and listeners would have got a lot out of it. So is there anything that we've missed today that you think is important?
I think your employees, I come back to it, your employees are your greatest asset. Treat them that way. They don't learn through osmosis, and set them up for success, and they will set you up for success.
Very good point. Something that a lot of business owners could learn, myself included. It's something that I've learned. That you need to train them and you need to set them up. So finally, where can people reach you if they'd like to discuss anything further with you or find out more about what you do?
Yeah, probably the best way is through the website, which is www.employeematters.com.au. There's also my personal website, natashahawker.com, and then Employee Metrics is www.employeemetrics.com.au. Or you can connect with me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter.
Excellent. Well, we'll link up all that on the show notes. And look, thank you, as I said before, very much for your time. And yeah, if anyone wants to get in contact with you, please contact Natasha. Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jeremy. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Natasha Hawker. I know I got a lot out of what she had to say. She's a very interesting lady with a great background in this stuff. And so I really encourage you to go back and either watch it again or listen to it again, because I'm sure that you'll pick up a lot of the key points, the more and more you watch it or listen to that episode. So the three key things, again, that I got from my interview with Natasha was her tips on hiring staff. And as I said in the intro, anything that you can do and make sure that you're hiring the right staff will help your business immensely. The importance of management, and the first rule of leadership, which I'm sure you know by now, is that you're responsible for everything first, and that you need to take that responsibility. And the final thing is a lack of communication. And as I said in the intro, for me, that's a massive thing that we see in the legal profession and businesses in generally, people not communicating. And you can see from my discussion with Natasha just how important that is in the employee context. So Craig, did you want to finish up for today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. We also thank Natasha, obviously, for giving up her time and sharing her wealth of knowledge with our viewers or listeners. As always, remember to like the video on Facebook or whatever other platform you might be listening or viewing Business Legal Lifecycle TV. There will be some show notes in regards to this show. If you go to the businesslegallifecycle.com.au website /089 for show or episode 89, you'll be able to get those show notes. We'll be back again on Monday for Fast Fix Monday, touching on some more things about bringing on an employee, specifically about the interview process, which is a pretty important one when you're going to bring on an employee. So join us again on Monday for Fast Fix Monday. As always, if you've got any questions or any comments you want to make, please share them on Facebook or Twitter or wherever else. And we're always here and happy to help. So thank you, everyone. See you on Monday.
Thanks, everyone.